Have you ever wondered that if why things aren't working out the way you expected, even though you've put in so much effort, you've done all the hard pushing and pulling, and you've tried to get everything the way you want to by putting in all that effort and hard work? We always hear that. People say, "Oh, I put so much effort and hard work at this, and it didn't turn out, and I don't feel like my effort is being well reflected in this outcome." And today I want us to delve further into this conversation and on what's happening at work podcast. My name is Joyce Odidison. And if that is something that is familiar, if you've led an organization, if you've been in HR, if you've been part of a team, you've led a team, and you're looking at all the effort and hard work that goes into getting the project done, getting the team to perform at a higher level, and you're not seeing the result, well, my guest today, Tyler Clapp, is going to help us take a deeper look behind that to see where we might be able to be more strategic and understand why our efforts aren't getting us the results we want. So, Tyler, welcome to the show.
Hi, Joyce. Thanks for having me. Glad to
It's
glad to be here today.
it's my pleasure. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and the work you do.
Yeah, so I come from an HR and learning and development background. I spent about 20 years in a corporate environment doing that type of work, and a couple years ago I was laid off, and that sort of gave me this inspiration to go into business for myself because I love coaching leaders and helping leaders become the best that they can be.
Mhm.
And I mean, quite honestly, just sort of exploring that thought and
Mhm.
thinking about what gets in the way of leaders bringing
Mhm.
their best self to work is sort of what led me to this idea of what I call the effort trap,
Mhm.
where we think that we're doing the right thing because we're putting in a lot of effort, but yet it doesn't feel like we're getting anywhere. And
Mm.
so, as someone who's more of a systems thinker, that caused me to ask, well, why is that?
Mhm.
And so that's sort of what I do now, is I help leaders sort of unpack that mystery.
Mhm. So tell us about what you're finding when you're helping unpack that mystery. What are some things that are coming up for leaders that they're saying, "Well, I did not think of that," or "I hadn't seen that." What are some of those pieces?
So, I think it starts with a bit of a misconception, and that misconception is that we've sort of been trained in the workplace that effort is what gets rewarded,
Mhm.
and I mean, it makes sense. If you look at high performing individuals, one of the things that distinguishes them from average or low performers is they put a lot of effort into their work.
Mm.
um, and what I'm finding is that effort is great when it comes to executing. When you have that clarity already and you're
Mhm.
just making things happen.
Mhm.
When it starts to get in the way is when there's some ambiguity in the system, and maybe you're
Mhm.
not entirely clear in your thinking. And so, since high performers, or performers in general, are used to thinking that, oh, I solve this by applying more effort, that's what
Mhm.
they do, and it ends up getting them stuck instead.
Mhm. Yeah, because now they're confused because I'm doing all of that. What's going on? Why am
Yep,
I not seeing the results, right?
exactly.
Makes perfect sense. All right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how do you help your clients move from thinking that they're doing something to actually doing it?
So, uh, what I'm finding, and I'm still, as a systems thinker, I'm still sort of conducting research. So,
Mhm.
so these are sort of preliminary patterns that I'm noticing. But so far, the thinking holds is that um, the first thing that tends to help unlock
Mhm.
um, is to help the individual start thinking about their thinking,
Mm-hmm.
or more specifically, to ask questions that helps them examine, what's really going on in the background? Am I really clear about what it is that I'm trying to achieve? Or am I really clear about why the effort that I'm putting in isn't resulting in the achievements, that I'm expecting? And
Uh-huh.
when they start to think about things like that, then they start to realize that there's ambiguity in the system. And
Mm-hmm.
ambiguity causes confusion. And, one of the conclusions that I'm, coming to is you can't solve an ambiguity problem by applying effort.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, because what you're really saying is, if you're not 100% clear on why, what you're doing isn't working, um, you know, what you really need to do is to sort of pause and reflect,
Mhm.
um, because the brain needs time to figure out, why is this not working? I mean, one of the things that the brain is very masterful at is recognizing patterns. And that's how habits are formed, doing things, repeatedly. And you know interestingly enough, my focus on this topic actually started looking at leaders who were stepping into larger leadership roles.
Mhm.
And so what I first started trying to unpack was, why do successful leaders struggle when they step into a larger leadership role? Um, and the reason for that is because they were very successful. And so they have their leadership playbook, if you will. But now that they're in this larger leadership role, the context around them has significantly changed,
Mhm.
but they're still using their old leadership playbook.
Mhm.
And so the quote unquote problem, if you will, is not an effort problem. It's the fact that they realize that their old leadership playbook doesn't work in the new context.
Tyler, this is so true because as you talk, what comes to mind is a situation I was working with at an organization, and this leader had been leading for a while and was doing well in the organization and had moved into a role where she was now leading a team and the bigger team, and she was doing exactly what you're saying. She was doing the same things, and the way she was talking and engaging with the team members wasn't appropriate because it was a different team, it was a different culture. And I remember clearly working with her. She was sent to work with me, and she said to me, I just realized that the leader I was then is not the leader I need to be now, because now it's a different situation, it's a different context, it's a different culture, it's a different role. The expectations are different. Even the culture of the people that I'm leading now is different. And she was really grateful to have that awareness. And you're right, many leaders are expecting that their motto, their idea of leadership is what should happen. And they are not well enough. They're not strong enough. They haven't been given the resilience tools and the confidence to step back and say, what about my leadership role and my leadership ability is not in line with the what I need for this team or this project or this group. We tend to believe that this is the way I lead and they just have to bend to it. And I do a lot of work around relational leadership where we're looking at the resilience of leaders to be able to be relational with their team.
Mm-hmm.
And when that doesn't happen, it's those questions we ask the leader. It's, what is it you need to adapt about yourself? What is it you need to change about your style that would create more harmony with this group and create the success that you want to have in leading this group? So this happens more often than we think. And I think your roadmap and your framework is very applicable in those situations. It's applicable for those who are moving from, I'm just part of the team, now I'm the leader, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you move from being a team to now the leader of the team, and those who, I'm just leading a couple of people, to now I'm leading a team of people, more than I had before, or I've moved into a leadership in a different part of the organization, in a new department. Our culture has changed. So all of those frameworks and all of those contextual aspects happen in the organization, but leaders are not given that um, structure or even the motivation or the awareness that this is going to require you to change your mode of leadership.
Yep. Yeah. No, I 100%. I would agree, and I'm I'm coming up with some hypotheses, as I continue talking to leaders as to why that is.
Mhm.
I think one of the potential reasons is just what you said. Either they're just not aware of it, or maybe they are aware of it, they can feel it, they can
Mhm.
feel that something's
Yeah.
off, but they don't have language to express it, nor do they have a framework to help them diagnose it.
Mhm.
um, and the other thing that I would add, and this is where from my perspective, and I'd love to hear your perspective on it, because you're you're definitely more of the resilience expert. But this is where I think resilience really comes into play, because
Mhm.
even if you have a framework to talk about it and to try and diagnose it, for very successful leaders, that's still uncomfortable, because you're now in this zone of ambiguity where the signals that you have detected are telling you that your old playbook doesn't work, but you
Mhm.
haven't figured out the new playbook yet,
Mhm.
but yet you still have to show up as a confident leader.
Mhm.
That takes a lot of emotional regulation and a lot
Yes.
of resilience.
Yes.
And that's where I think sometimes it all breaks down, because even if we know what the problem is, we're not comfortable with staying in that ambiguity long enough in order to figure it out.
I love that you bring that up, because that is so much a part of what leaders are struggling with. And I've had so many leaders, especially when we're talking about people in high tech, in engineering, in medicine, they've been they've been socialized to think you are the leader and you're supposed to have all the answers.
Yep.
And even though you don't have the answers, you have to act like you have the answers. So that whole piece of winging it becomes frustrating, because they're doing it and employees are like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
Why are they doing that? Can they see that's not working? I was speaking with a client the other day, and she said, my entire executive, they just like to beat a dead horse. They
Mm.
don't have the ability to say this horse is dead, so let's bury it and look for a new
Move
horse that
on.
alive
Yeah.
to ride. It's just, let's just beat this old horse, beat the dead horse, beat the dead horse, because they don't have what I call the resilience anchors. And this is where we go into looking at what gives us the self-esteem, the professional self-esteem, to say, you know what, we made this decision, but based on what we knew, we thought it was the right decision at that time. Now we have more information and we recognize that that wasn't where we should be going.
Yep.
This is where we should be going. And as a result, we are switching gears. And we thank you for your patience. We thank you for your understanding. And we want to invite you and encourage you. And we hope that you will support this new effort.
Yep.
Those words should be part of leadership. But when I tell leaders, I will get this pushback. When you ask your employees how you could be a better leader, oh, absolutely not. I will not do that, Joyce. I don't want to do. And I'm like, why not? They're seeing you every day. They know more about your behavior and your habit than you do. And
Yep.
they know what's not working. Ask them, make your life easy,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And it's that ego thing. So
Yes.
one of the things that we do, one of the tools we use is in our whole Wiz program, we have the 9 dimensional framework, and we spend a lot of time with leaders on that spiritual dimension, building the resilience anchors, self-esteem, personal style, values, belief, passion, courage, right?
Yep.
Purpose.
Yep.
Because what we're finding is when they spend time, integrity, when they spend time understanding what those are and standing in their integrity, they have no problem saying, you know what, we made that decision last year based on the information we had. We thought we were on the ball. But what we're learning this year, we need to switch gears. And for those of you who knew that before, those of you who send ideas, or those of you, please continue to share more ideas, because as we grow or as we move along, we need to adapt with what's happening in our society. We need to adapt with the changes. And leaders should not be afraid of change and leading change and showing that part of change is that emotional regulation. Then we go through the spiritual, where they get to really look at those resilience anchors. Then we go through the social. How are you communicating it? That's what we
Mm.
look at, the communication. How are you communicating that? It's resilience has a lot to do with how we communicate with
Yep.
ourselves and with others. And then we go into emotional, which is the self mastery, understanding the emotional elements of it. It's critical for leaders to understand that and apply that. So I think it's really key for them to look at, am I a resilient leader? Because part of resilience is being able to adapt, being able to be agile, being able to recognize when you're going the wrong way and to pivot. it's
Yep.
that's and that's what many leaders are struggling with. They've never been given the structure on how to pivot and how to do so confidently. They
Yes.
think that pivoting is a sign of failure.
Yes.
Somewhere in their brain, it brings up a lot of negative assumptions and limiting beliefs that they need to let go so
Yep.
they can pivot. So I
Yep.
love that we're having this conversation.
Yeah, me too. And I'm getting excited to hear a little bit more, about your perspective because again, systems thinker. So I'm thinking about, oh, that's interesting. How does that, apply to the way, I'm thinking about things? And one of the things that resonated with me is that, traditional when we look at decision making, traditional thought or traditional leadership development around decision making looks at judgment, or how did I evaluate, my conclusions to come to a
Mhm,
decision.
mhm,
I argue that there is an entire additional system, the discernment operating system, that happens before that. And the the discernment operating system, what it does is it recognizes signals, it makes observations, it then processes that information to form a conclusion,
mhm,
and then those conclusions get fed into judgment, which is how we make decisions. And so what you're talking about in terms of resilience, is what I think about in terms of maintaining good discernment. And that's not a personal failure in my thinking. Unfortunately, I think that's what a lot of leaders think. They think that, oh, if I made a poor decision, then that reflects badly on me. Well, maybe, like if you exercise poor judgment, then maybe that does reflect poorly on you. But if you
Mhm.
exercised good judgment, but your discernment operating system hasn't been updated recently,
Yes. Yes.
then that's a systems failure. That's not
Mhm.
that's not a personal failure. And we can fix that.
Mhm.
And part of
Mhm.
fixing that is exactly what you were talking about in terms of resilience and making sure that your thinking remains updated and current
Yes.
with the
Yes.
changing times.
Oh,
So,
oh.
yeah,
Leadership has been so abused. The role of leadership has been so abused in so many instances in our society that you could ask 10 different people what leadership means and they will have 10 different responses,
sure. Yep.
because leadership is no longer about that servant mentality where you're leading people by understanding their needs and supporting their growth and their development, and looking at opportunities to provide more resources and to enhance their capacity to deliver. It's no longer, creating a vision that resonates with your people, that shows them a bigger picture, that moves them forward. Because many of the leaders themselves, they don't even know their vision. They don't have a personal vision. They
Yep.
don't know their purpose. They don't know what their passion is. So how can you then lead others to do that?
Yep.
How do you bring forward a purpose, a vision, and a passion for your organization that others can align with and say, I see this and I'm walking through it because I believe you? Because if you want true, honest people, if you want true, honest followers in for your leadership, you need to bring a leadership vision that they can buy into. You need to bring a leadership vision that they can say, yes, this resonates with me. This aligns with my values. This aligns with my beliefs. So this is one of the most important element of leadership. We don't spend enough time helping leaders to understand their own vision, their purpose, their passion, and developing their self-esteem. Because when we don't do that, we see a lot of mock leadership happening,
Yep.
and we see it in all levels of society and organization, and we sit back and complain. Why are we complaining? This is what we've settled for.
Yeah.
We've
Yep.
settled for bad leadership. And so we're struggling under the bad leadership because we did not give the people that we put in leadership roles the opportunity. We didn't demand that they become their best self. We are not, they don't see leadership as a place to grow, and you have to grow into your leadership. The leader I was 10 years, 20 years ago is not the leader I am today. And I certainly hope the same for many leaders. And part of that is the growth that happens in the journey, that happens while you lead. And that's where the self esteem, the professional self esteem comes in, because you have to be able to say, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I'm
Mm-hmm.
growing in this area. I'm learning in this area. This wasn't an area that I had even imagined. And that's why we use the well-being intelligence system, because it shows those 9 dimensions that we are continuing to grow into. And it's a system. As you grow in one area, other areas will develop and other areas will grow, and you will become a better person, and those you lead will be more satisfied, and they will also see your growth, and that will, of course, motivate their own personal growth. But leadership has always been this rigid place. I am the leader and this is how I lead and you follow my leadership, but it's not taking us anywhere.
Yeah, yeah, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. I love the analogy of like put your oxygen mask on first before helping others, and we're probably familiar with that. If we've flown on a plane, but it's so true for leadership as well. You
Absolutely.
cannot help others be their best if you yourself are not at your best,
Mhm.
and then I would tack on some change management theory to that, which says that you can't lead an organization to adopt, a lifestyle or values or a way of thinking if you haven't fully bought into that and aren't practicing it,
Mm-hmm.
yourself. And
So
it,
true.
it's funny because to practitioners like you and me, like that probably seems so intuitively obvious, but
Mm-hmm.
just a quick story. It makes me think of I was working at an organization where we were trying to encourage we called it summer hours, where we were trying to encourage leaders, well, not just leaders, the entire company, that hey, in the afternoon on Friday, like if you have everything done that you need to get done this week, then go ahead and take off, and start your weekend a little early. But I had to specifically tell the president of the company that, if you want people to do this, then you have to do it too.
Mm-hmm.
And when people, because his office was right next to the elevators to exit the building,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you can't tell people, or encourage them to, hey, if you're done with your work, start your weekend early. But then if they see you sitting in your office every time they leave the building, like they're not going to respond with that type of behavior. And
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the mismatches that sometimes people don't always understand.
You are so right, because the anxiety, the fear, the nervousness that going to step in. Hey, folks, if you're watching this, I have Tyler Clapp here with me, and Tyler is has spent 20 years of corporate experience across HR, talent, leadership development, including 7 years in management. Tyler brings a grounded neuroscience informed perspective to what it actually takes to lead well when the old rules no longer apply. And isn't that the reality in today? Because the old rules do not apply anymore. We have to shift, and leadership have to. Because in that story, Tyler, when I am going out and I'm leaving at noon and I'm seeing the owner of the company there, the president there, I'm like, I hope he doesn't think I'm lazy. Well, maybe I'll
Right?
just stay a little bit. Maybe I'll wait till he leaves first. Because it's, especially when you're changing the culture of the organization, it would be much better if he took his work home
Sure.
and finished up there, because as leaders, our plates are always full. There's always last minute things we need to know, that meeting, and you're thinking Friday afternoon, oh, everybody's gone, I have peace. Maybe he goes for a walk and then come back later and finish up. It would create the new culture for people and give that ease, because when we're creating something new in our organization or in our life as leaders, we have to be prepared to take the first step and to encourage that change. That is so cool.
Yeah, no, and I mean what you just said was part of the coaching that I provided this president. I was like, "Hey, you don't have to stop working, but you can't continue working here and expect other people to leave." And so that's exactly what he did. He started leaving, around 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He took a little bit of a break, and then he would fire back up and spend another, 3 or 4 hours working at home. And magically, the culture started to shift and people felt more comfortable, if they had their work done, leaving a little early on Friday.
Mm-hmm. And such a great analogy of the simple little things that makes leadership truly align with the people and the culture. So thank you, Tyler, for being here. Tyler, if there's a leader watching, if there's someone who's just putting in so much effort right now, and they feel like I'm doing so much, I've been putting in so much effort and I'm not getting the results, what would you say to them?
So I would say, first of all, great for recognizing that, because recognizing that pattern is the first step. And then my piece of advice would be, once you've recognized that pattern, to take a pause, sit with it for a moment, and spend a little time reflecting, why is this happening? What might be, I like to think of it as like, treat it sort of like a little experiment. What might be some possible reasons why I'm putting in all of this effort, but I'm not getting the results that I'm expecting. And
Mhm.
just through that little bit of reflection will probably point you in a direction that would be worth exploring.
Mm. Tyler, where can people get a hold of you? How can they reach you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. You can look me up on LinkedIn. Feel free to follow me there if you want to follow along, with my thinking. My company is Dive Deep Development, so you can reach me at divedeepdevelopment.com if you want to learn a little bit more, about my services and how I might be able to help support if some of what I've said today has resonated with you.
Mhm. Well, Tyler, thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure having you and just sharing your thoughts and helping us to break the code, crack that code on why do leaders think that more effort is going to be the answer to fixing the problems in the workplace. Thank you so much. And if you're listening and you are yourself thinking about this and you want to build those resilience anchors, don't be afraid. Just take that time, take that opportunity as a leader, build up yourself. Connect with us at interpersonalwellness.com. Get those resilience anchors, start building them. Map your resilience, understand how your self esteem, your passion, your vision, your purpose will make you a greater leader. And I will share Tyler's information right next to this podcast. It's going to be in the pieces and any links that he has so you can connect with him. And thank you for being here today as you go back to your work. We always have to ask what's happening at work and how can we make it better. My name is Joyce Odidison, and I'll see you next time.